My name is Ryan Cole, and for 3 quiet years, I've lived on the edge of the Oregon coast, in a weather-worn cabin where the sea mist drifts like breath through the pines. The nearest town is 15 miles away, and that's precisely how I like it. Solitude has a sound, the soft groan of the tide against the cliffs, the whisper of rain across the roof, and in that sound, I've tried to forget the voice that once filled every silence I owned. Her name was Emily Warren. Emily had a laugh that always arrived a heartbeat before her smile, bright enough to make people turn their heads. We met in Seattle, at a wedding I was photographing. She was covering the same event for a travel magazine, clever, restless, alive with curiosity. I remember the first thing she said to me after spilling champagne on my camera bag: "I ruined things beautifully." I should have taken that as a prophecy instead of a flirtation. Our connection burned fast and steady, like film exposed to too much light. Within months, we were inseparable: weekend road trips, shared notebooks, coffee at 2 a.m. while she read drafts aloud and I adjusted photos under the glow of the monitor. She said my pictures made the ordinary seem sacred. I said her words turned the truth into art. We believed that was love, two dreamers convincing each other that passion could replace permanence. Then came the cracks: hairline at first, missed calls, sudden work trips, a new perfume lingering on her sweaters, one I'd never bought her. When I asked, she smiled too quickly. "It's just research," she said. "Writers chase stories." But the story she was chasing wasn't one she planned to publish. I told myself doubt was poison, that trust needed blind faith to survive. So I looked away, pretending not to notice when her phone vibrated late at night, when she slipped outside to answer in hushed tones that the rain couldn't quite drown. The night everything collapsed was unremarkable: gray skies, steady drizzle, the city breathing through its neon pulse. I came home early, shoes squeaking on the hardwood, and heard laughter floating from the living room. Her laughter, but edged with something unfamiliar. When I stepped forward, time fractured. I saw her. And someone else. The expression on her face when our eyes met wasn't fear, it was recognition, as though she'd been expecting this moment, rehearsing it in her mind. In that instant, the world went silent except for the rain tapping on the windowpane. I didn't shout. I didn't demand explanations. I simply turned, walked out the door, and drove until the skyline vanished behind a curtain of fog. That was the night Ryan Cole disappeared. And 3 years later, when Emily Warren stood on my porch again, older, thinner, eyes full of ghosts, I understood that no distance is wide enough to bury the truth. When I opened the door that morning, the world held its breath. The coastal fog hung low, thick enough to blur the line between sea and sky, and for a heartbeat, I thought the shape standing on my porch was another ghost my mind had conjured. Then she spoke my name. Ryan. That voice, fragile, familiar, unbearably human, cut through the years like a blade through mist. I hadn't heard it since the night I vanished. Now it trembled in the cold air, uncertain yet determined, like someone walking barefoot across broken glass. "Emily," I said, the word tasting foreign. "You shouldn't be here." She looked smaller than I remembered, her once effortless grace replaced by something brittle. The wind tangled her hair as she clutched her coat tighter. "I know," she said softly. "But I had to see you. I should have closed the door. I should have protected the quiet I'd built, the fragile, necessary peace that kept me from unraveling. Instead, I stepped aside. Maybe curiosity was stronger than resentment. Or maybe I just wanted to see if the woman standing before me was real." Inside, the cabin felt smaller than usual. The scent of wood smoke and saltwater clung to the air. She stood near the window, tracing the fogged glass with her fingertip, her reflection fractured by raindrops. "You disappeared," she whispered. No one knew where you went. That was the point. She flinched, then turned toward me, eyes searching my face for some trace of the man she used to know. You look different. Time does that. Silence grew between us, heavy and alive. It wasn't awkward, it was dangerous, like a wire stretched too tight. Finally, she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded envelope, the edges soft from being handled too many times. I found something, she said. It's about that night. I didn't move. The words that night cracked open a door I'd spent years keeping sealed. I wanted to tell her to leave, to take whatever ghosts she'd brought and disappear again. But her voice broke slightly when she added, "Please, Ryan. Just read it." Something in that plea disarmed me. I took the envelope, feeling the weight of paper and memory in my hands. It wasn't heavy, but it might as well have been a stone pressing on my chest. "Why now?" I asked quietly. She looked at me then, and I saw the truth behind her exhaustion. "Because I can't keep living like it never happened. You deserve to know what you saw wasn't the whole story." Outside, the waves collided against the rocks, the sound rising like distant thunder. Inside, I stood frozen, caught between the life I'd buried and the woman who'd come to exhume it. I hadn't decided whether to open the letter. But deep down, I already knew, once I did, nothing would ever stay buried again. The letter lay between us like a live wire. I hadn't opened it yet, but I could feel its weight altering the air, bending it toward something inevitable. Emily stood still, her arms wrapped around herself as though bracing for impact. The storm outside began to gather strength, wind rattled the windows, waves broke harder against the cliffs. I tore the envelope open. The handwriting inside was familiar, Mark's, my closest friend, the man I'd found in my home that night. The man whose silence had haunted me. Each word drew blood. "Ryan. I never told you the truth. That night wasn't what you think." Emily came to me for help. She was terrified, not unfaithful. There was something she couldn't tell you yet, and I forced her to face it. I thought I was helping. I failed both of you. I'm sorry, asterisk. I stopped reading. The paper trembled in my hands. I looked at her, and she didn't look away. "What couldn't you tell me?" I asked. My voice was low, steady, though every heartbeat felt like an earthquake. She hesitated, eyes glistening. "I was pregnant, Ryan." The words hollowed the room. For a long moment, there was no sound but the wind screaming through the trees. "I was scared," she continued. "You were struggling with work, with money. I didn't know how to tell you. I wanted to wait, to find the right moment. But Mark found out first. He told me I needed to tell you immediately, and that's why I went to him that night." I tried to speak, but my throat locked. 1,000 memories crashed through me, the late-night arguments, the distance, the unspoken fears. "Pregnant," I whispered, tasting the word like it was foreign. "And you lost it?" Her shoulders folded inward. 2 weeks after you left. I didn't even get to tell you. I thought maybe you'd come back, but you disappeared without a trace. No number, no address, nothing." She drew a shaky breath, her eyes full of salt and guilt. "I thought you hated me so much that you'd rather vanish than hear the truth." I turned away, gripping the edge of the table to steady myself. The letter, her voice, the storm, it all blurred into one aching sound. I'd spent 3 years building a life on the ashes of a lie. Or was it a misunderstanding? The betrayal I'd carried like armor suddenly felt heavier, sharper, undeserved. Finally, I faced her. "You could have come sooner." "I did," she said, voice breaking. "You didn't want to be found. Outside, thunder rolled over the sea like the echo of everything we'd left unsaid. Inside, I stood staring at the woman I once loved, realizing that the story I'd been running from wasn't over, it had only been waiting for me to open the door. That night, the storm refused to rest. Rain lashed against the windows like it was trying to erase the cabin itself, and inside, Emily and I sat across from each other, two strangers bound by memories neither of us could escape. The letter still lay between us, stained with the smudge of her thumbprint. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't empty, it pulsed with everything we had lost. Finally, I said, "I thought you destroyed me." She didn't defend herself. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but firm. "Maybe I did. But you destroyed us when you walked away." The words hit harder than I expected. I'd built my survival around anger, around the certainty that she was the villain. Without that, the pain had nowhere left to live. "I saw what I saw, Emily," I said. "You and him, in our home, how was I supposed to see anything else?" Her eyes softened with something deeper than sadness. "I know. And I'll live with that forever. But if you had stayed, if you had just asked, maybe we wouldn't be sitting here as ghosts." Ghosts. That was exactly what we were. Two souls haunting a past that refused to rest. The fire cracked behind us, throwing unsteady light across her face. It caught the faint scar on her temple, the one she'd gotten hiking years ago. I remembered the way she'd laughed when she fell, brushing off blood like it was nothing. Back then, she had seemed invincible. Now, she just looked tired, fragile, but honest. "What happened to you after?" I asked, surprising myself with how gently the question came out. She took a moment. "I tried to move on. I wrote. I traveled. But everything I touched felt hollow." "You think you disappeared to escape the pain, Ryan?" "I disappeared too, I just stayed in the same place." Her honesty disarmed me. For the first time, I saw her not as the woman who betrayed me, but as the woman who had been broken too. "I went to his grave," she whispered. "Mark's. I visit sometimes. He wanted to tell you the truth before he died. He couldn't forgive himself for what you believed." Something in me gave way then, not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. Grief doesn't just belong to the wounded, it belongs to the ones who caused the wound too. I leaned back, exhausted by the weight of revelation. "What do you want from me now?" She looked up, her expression raw. "Nothing. I just wanted you to know." Thunder cracked again, rolling over the sea like an aftershock. I studied her face, and for the first time, I didn't see the past, I saw the possibility of release. But release isn't peace. It's just the moment before you decide what comes next. And as I watched her gather her coat, preparing to leave, I realized I wasn't sure whether I wanted the door to close behind her, or open for good. Morning arrived quietly, as if the storm had exhausted the sky. The sea was calm again, the air washed clean. When I opened the door, the scent of wet cedar drifted in, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the familiar ache of isolation. Instead, there was a fragile kind of stillness, the kind that follows surrender. Emily had left before dawn. The only trace of her was the letter, folded neatly on the table beside a small photograph, one I didn't remember her taking. It showed us years ago, standing on a mountain ridge, wind in our hair, laughter frozen mid-breath. We looked fearless then, like two people who believed love could outpace time. For a long while, I stared at that photograph, waiting for anger to return. It didn't. What came instead was grief, quiet and unremarkable, the kind that no longer screams, it only sighs. I realized then that I had spent 3 years mistaking silence for healing. I thought vanishing would mend what was broken inside me. But running doesn't erase pain, it only teaches you how to live with half a heart. Now, as I stood in the pale morning light, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel since the night I left: compassion. Not for her, but for the version of myself who couldn't bear the truth. The man who thought forgiveness was weakness. The man who believed love had to be pure to be real. I picked up the photograph and turned it over. In her handwriting, faint but steady, she'd written, "For the life we almost had." The words didn't sting. They settled. They told me that not every ending is a failure, some are just unfinished stories that choose peace over pain. I walked outside, the grass still heavy with dew. The sea stretched endlessly, silver beneath the morning sun. It looked different today, though nothing had changed. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was the simple truth that I no longer needed to hide from my own story. Emily and I would probably never be what we were, and maybe that was mercy. Love isn't always meant to survive, sometimes it exists to transform you, to carve out the parts that can finally feel again. I stood there until the horizon blurred and whispered into the wind, not expecting an answer, "I forgive you." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They just existed, light, freeing, final. Then I went back inside, placed the photograph on the mantel, and reached for my camera for the first time in years. Through the lens, the morning light looked alive again. And in that moment, I understood, some stories don't end where they break. They end where we finally learn to see clearly. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.